Yeah, it's always exciting to get to National Signing Day. You stand up here like a proud father and recruit of coaches, and know that there's been a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat and time involved in building trust and respect with all the players on this board, but also all of their mentors and parents and everybody that's associated with these young men. Want to say thank you to our coaching staff and our coaching staff's families, our recruiting staff, and everybody associated with Mizzou. We all have to work together. Recruiting is the lifeblood of our program, and everybody within our organization has an aspect and handles some aspect of recruiting, from the strength staff to the training room to the equipment room, um, to our coaching staff, recruiting department, sports information, and our administration. And so this really is a cumulative effort of all of that. Worked extremely hard to get here. We really wanted to start first in our state, and that's where it always is going to start for as long as I'm the head coach here at Mizzou. We've got to build a wall around the state of Missouri. And, that starts with building relationships with the high school coaches. And so I think we've started establishing our roots there. We were able to sign what we consider to be 8 in-state players. And that's very exciting for us. And we recruited, guys that we feel like can play at the SEC level and help us win a championship. And so very thankful for those 8 players who decided to stay home and wear that M on their helmet and the Tiger logo on their chest. And that's very exciting. The second thing we're looking for is always the right fit. Focused, intangibles, talented, and tough. We were able to recruit 10 state champions. So this signee class, 10 of these guys played and won a state championship. 11 of them played in it, but 10 of them won the state championship. And when they win a state championship, you understand that they come from a culture of winning. They have a standard of winning standard of performance. And so that was exciting for us. And then the next thing we had to do is really dive in, and we have some roster management. I wouldn't call them issues, but definitely some needs. Our roster was a little bit out of whack in a couple of areas, specifically the defensive line and defensive backs. And so we really went hard to sign both of those. And we felt like we really got what we needed there to build not necessarily just quality depth, but quality at that position. We talked about specifically that defensive line is where you're going to win championships. And when this program has been at its best, Eli Drinkwitz was producing NFL players at the defensive line position. And so we definitely had to get out and get back to doing that. At the defensive back position, we're losing 2 Senior Bowl players at that position and several other seniors. And so we had to go get some guys. We play with 5 defensive backs. So it was important to go get them. Not only were we able to dive in and get high school players, we had to go get junior college players. Obviously needed to go get some transfers too, and we're able to find those. Went out across the state, across the United States of America, dipped into Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Indiana, California Junior College, North Carolina, been to a Kansas JUCO and Colorado. And so very excited about being able to touch all those places, build relationships in such a weird time with this pandemic. So again, excited about this class. Feel like we did exactly what we set out to do, and can't wait to get these young men on campus, which several of them will be enrolling early, and get started to building the program to where we want it to be. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
First one's going to come from Gabe DeArmond.
Eli, how important is it in recruiting offensive players, especially, to have your quarterback in the class on board, maybe early in the process? And what did you see in Tyler that you liked so early on?
Well, I think the number one thing for Tyler is he's a winning quarterback. He led his team to a state championship. I know last year, obviously didn't get an opportunity to play this year, but was undefeated his junior year. And just does an absolute tremendous job of being a leader, a gatherer type. When you watch his tape, he's got a tremendous amount of toughness. He's accurate with the football. He shows improvisation. He's able to improvise when the play is not there, and create with his feet or create with the scramble to find a ball, to find a throw. I think he proved himself as a thrower in his Elite 11 performance this summer. And then, like you said, quarterbacks are leaders. And so he was able to really, when some people were trying to make some late moves on our players, he was able to really hold down the fort and then able to be very influential in getting us a late flip of his teammate.
Dave Matter, go ahead.
Eli, Travion Ford, one of the many kind of pass rushers that you added. What about him kind of fits what you guys like to do defensively? And with a lot of these guys that are listed as DNs, how many of them can eventually kind of move around, play different spots?
Yeah, Travion Ford was a Class 3 Defensive Player of the Year, totaled over 35 sacks in his high school career, was a state champion as a junior. Obviously, as a guy who can really rush the passer and has got a dynamic ability to use speed to power, cause turnovers with his length, really plays extremely hard. And so he's a guy that we targeted early, and I think his commitment, and I believe it was in April, really spurred the rest of St. Louis to get going with us. I know St. Louis has always been a priority in the past, but maybe not as mined recently. And so I think we ended up with maybe 6 guys from that St. Louis area. Depends on how you count Jackson, but really excited about being able to get those guys from St. Louis, and Travion being one of the first to jump on board was exciting. There's a lot of position flexibility within our defensive line and what we ask guys to do. The bandit position and field defensive end positions are really true defensive end spots. That boundary end is a 4-eye that's maybe a little bit longer and more versatile than a true 3 technique and a 4-3 scheme. And so, those are positions that people can grow into. Again, we look for length and body size. And so some of these guys, when they get here and get with Zach, are going to really grow and develop, and we'll put them in the best position to be successful.
Next one's going to come from Peter Baugh from The Athletic. Peter.
Yeah, Eli, you mentioned this a little with Tyler, but with Mekhi Wingo specifically, how much did he mean specifically just to, I guess, recruiting other players within the St. Louis area and I guess across the country?
Yeah, Mekhi, again, Class 6 Defensive Player of the Year, was a state champion as a junior, has a relentless motor and competitive spirit, played both ways for his high school this past season. But he was our first commitment, and he was the first one to get on board with the new zoo. And he was one of the ones that was able to get on campus before the pandemic and experience a junior day and really just feel like, all right, this is home. And he was tremendous throughout the year. I remember him really getting and developing a relationship with Ryan Horskamp and really developing a relationship with Arden Walker, which ultimately led to us getting that late surprise today. So really thankful to him and his mom, Tanika, and just what an awesome family, and excited about that young man. And obviously his head football coach, Coach Steeples, former Mizzou alum, obviously, knew he was coached well, and excited that he was able to be here with us.
Next one's going to come from Max Baker from the Columbia Missourian. Max.
Yeah, Coach, with players having like the unique opportunity to come back next year, how were you able to assess how many kids you could sign? And did you have to get sort of a sense from the guys on the team now if they were coming back, just so you knew how many guys could sign in this class?
It didn't have to affect your signing numbers at all, because the seniors that come back are not going to be counted towards your 85 scholarship limit. So it's just like having a few extra numbers. But, again, with our roster, the way, let's just say it was out of sorts on the defensive line, it's going to be imperative that we get some of these seniors to come back, and we are. But again, I don't want to steal their thunder, and there's still a couple of games to be played, which may change their mind. But we are going to get a few of those guys back.
Next one's going to come from Eric Blum from the Columbia Daily Tribune. Eric.
Hey, Eli, now that you see, I think it's the 21 guys that you had signed today, or 20 guys, where's the biggest position of need or area of need you're looking to that February date for?
I think that's what we're going to be evaluating over the next 2 weeks as we finish out the season, see some of these underclassmen continue to grow and develop. and see where bowl practice leads us, and it'll give us a chance to really breathe and check the roster out and say, okay, with this guy gone and this guy gone, this is where we've got some holes to fill. But I don't really worry about what's coming next. I'm excited about what's coming right here, and know that these guys are going to be able to help us round out the roster and fix and compete immediately. So we're excited about these guys. I don't necessarily know what else is going to be out there, but I know that we're very excited about the ones we got.
Next one's going to come from Mitchell 40 from Power Mizzou. Mitch.
Eli, you mentioned Darius Walker being a surprise today. I'm curious, did you find out as you were watching the commitment ceremony or the announcement that he was picking Missouri? And I guess just what was your communication like with him leading up to today?
Well, I mean, obviously we've been communicating pretty good for the last 48 hours, but last night we were supposed to get on the phone and we missed. And so this morning, in my mind, if we weren't able to get him on the phone, then that wasn't a good sign. And so, Coach Walters and Coach Haley felt pretty good about it. I, on the other hand, I guess I took a pessimistic view of the time, and then later after he committed, found out from his mom that he had worked out pretty hard and went to bed, and she was supposed to wake him up and she didn't. And so that's why we didn't get on the phone. But I told her she had me worried, and I told Arden I'm going to get him back at some point.
Next one's going to come from Ben Arnett from KOMU. Ben.
Eli, you mentioned the 8 in-state kids, 5 or 6 from St. Louis, a year in here and your first, full class. I mean, how important is that to the program? What does it mean for you moving forward to establish that?
Well, hopefully it's just a beginning of taking root where the best players want to stay. And there was still some that got away. But you got to start small and continue to expand and lay the foundation and lay some roots. And I think we were able to create some inroads, specifically in rural Missouri and in St. Louis. And we got to continue to do better on the west side of the state and get into Kansas City and continue to develop relationships there and make sure that people understand and young men understand that, you don't have to look anywhere else. If you want to play the best football in college, if you want to play the best football in the country, you can stay right home and wear that M on your, the block M on your helmet and that Tiger logo on the chest, and you got a chance to accomplish all your dreams right here at home.
Next one's going to come from Suichi Terada from the Star. Go ahead, Suichi.
Hey, I know we talked about this a little bit, but just from your perspective as a head coach, kind of looking in, what's kind of the relationship like between the recruits, and it seems like they're pretty vocal on Twitter, and especially getting other guys to commit and everything.
Are you asking what's the relationship amongst the group?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what we kind of preach all the time is the relationship you have with the players that you come in together is going to be, some of the strongest bonds you have while you're here. Besides your position group, it's going to be the guys that you signed with, because you're going to be the ones working out together. You're going to be the ones living together. You're going to be the ones, going through some difficult times together and creating a brotherhood and a bond. And so you try to do that early. And that, again, I think that helps when you get some waves of, the commitment issues and all those other things that might occur. So I think the bond has been very strong. I think it always helps when you have a core group, specifically in state. And then, I thought our coaches did an excellent job of building connections, amongst the positions, specifically like, Zach Lovett and Damian Wilson, the 2 linebackers. I know Coach Smith did a great job of, unifying that group. So it's not a competition between the two. It's a competitive spirit that they're going to collectively raise the level of the linebacker play in our team.
Next one's going to come from Gabe DeArmond. Gabe.
Yeah, Eli, the offensive line in this class, first of all, you've got 2. Is that about where you want to be, or would you like to add more? And can you talk about Connor and the process of getting EJ here, even though he was a little different situation? Obviously, we knew about that a while ago.
Yeah. We're still going to be looking for one more offensive lineman potentially. And we're still looking for, and I'm not sure what the NCAA rules, but what if I could say what specific position. But we're looking for length and really creating some length at that position. But when you count this class, Zeke Powell really counts in this class because of how late he was and what number he's going to count towards in your 85, and what number he counts towards in your 25 hard limit that you can sign. So, with Zeke, Connor, and EJ, that was the 3. We were originally taking 3 in this class. So that's the 3. We could potentially take 4 if we feel like it would strengthen the roster, or it's the right position. There was a couple of guys who have reached out to us and wanted to come, but just to be blunt, it wasn't a position that we felt like we had to have in this class. And so again, we have to have length, and we need a freshman with length or an instant impact player. Connor Tolson has been unbelievable. A young man who bleeds black and gold, a young man who, again, has been a part of a state championship team, and played back-to-back state championships. He comes from Jackson. He's got an incredible high school football coach. He's a great athlete. He says he's bowled the game of 300. We're disappointed that we didn't get an official visit to really see if that's true. He says he's a scratch golfer. We haven't taken him out to Midway yet to find out for sure. But he is a good athlete, and we're very excited about. He's a young man that we think can play multiple positions and give us position flexibility. But he's got the right kind of demeanor, and he's got a really bad haircut. So you could combine all those things, and you got yourself an offensive lineman in the mold of Case Cook.
Next one's going to come from Len Jennings. Len, go ahead.
Hey, Eli, you touched on this about recruiting in the Kansas City area. Were there just more challenges of making those connections, or maybe there's the players weren't in this area for you to be focusing on?
No, there's always great players in Kansas City. There's always great players in Kansas City. There's great football in Kansas City. There's tremendous high school coaches. And we just, quite honestly, we just missed. We missed on a couple of guys, weren't able to get it done. They end up going other places and just haven't built the inroads that we have to in order to make sure that those guys stay here. And, we're going to make sure that we're really pushing that for the next class, and felt like we've already kind of got that going, to be honest. But just didn't for whatever reason weren't able to make the right connection. But there is tremendous players in Kansas City, and there was tremendous players in Kansas City this past year. But for whatever reasons, it just didn't work out.
Mitchell.
I know this early signing period actually goes through Friday, so I was curious, are you expecting any more this week, or do we think we're done adding signings until February?
I don't think you're ever done. We got about, I think with our hard limit, we potentially have 5 spots that we could still sign. So recruiting's 365, 24/7. Never done. Don't know that we'll get any, but.
Next one's going to come from Dave Matter. Dave.
Eli, back before the dead period set in, I think it was late January, early February, you were able to get a lot of these guys on campus for unofficials, especially you had that weekend with all the East St. Louis guys. Just how pivotal did that end up being? Because after that, you couldn't have the face-to-face really.
Well, I think ultimately that's what helped us land Dominic, a dynamic playmaking receiver that was committed to another school that, ultimately him and his mom, we felt like the whole time was going to end up here just because we had made a connection. They had been here. And I think that's, Makai was here that weekend. Connor was here that weekend. Ryan Horskamp was here that weekend. And some future Tigers that'll still be coming were here that weekend. And so I think when we look back here in several years, we're going to realize that weekend had a huge impact on the future of Mizzou football. I think one thing that I've also forgot to mention was just extremely proud of this class, including having to deal with NCAA sanctions from previous issues in 2015. And so for our staff to be able to be creative and have to go weeks at a time without having any type of contact with any potential recruits, when you can only have contact with recruits through through electronic communication, I think has been pretty impressive, and still got a few more to go. But we'll keep on battling.
Andrew Kaufman, go ahead.
Coach, to sign the 20th ranked class in the nation, I believe that's the highest that Mizzou's ever had. It's only your first year. What kind of statement do you think that makes for the future of this program?
I mean, that's the number one core value, is always compete to do it better than it's ever been done before. I'd seen the stat where I think we had since 2017 to 2020, I think we'd only signed 4 stars or better, which is the lowest in the SEC. I think we signed 5 or something like that. Which ranking site you looked at, and this is one class. That's the always compete spirit and mindset. I will say I don't get a ton of caught up in the rankings and all that stuff. I think you got to find the right fit. It's good to be recognized, and it's good to have a benchmark of what we're trying to create. I don't know if it makes any kind of statement to the rest of the SEC, but I know it makes a statement to our state, to our fans, that this staff and myself is going to push recruiting, and we're always going to compete. We're never going to settle for anything less than our best. And it starts right here in this state. It starts with making sure that we shut down the borders of the state. If you sign the best players in the state, you're going to sign a top 25 class. I firmly believe that.
Next one's going to come from Jack Sobel. Jack.
Eli, I was just wondering if you could touch on Dominique Lovett. What about his skill set do you like so much, and what kind of role do you see him playing in your offense down the line?
Well, he was a guy that's, he plays in the slot, but he's got tremendous speed and return ability, a guy that we feel like can return punts and kickoffs for us, which is something that we needed to recruit and get. I think he averaged somewhere around 17 yards per catch last year. It is an explosive play waiting to happen. Him and Tyler obviously had a great connection, but as a guy who can win at the line of scrimmage, stretch the field vertically, get off press man, get off man-to-man coverage, find holes in zones. Reminds me of a guy that I was fortunate enough to coach at NC State, Jacoby Myers, with just his short area quickness and natural ball catching skills, but also finding holes in zones. And that's why it was so important for us. He's a guy who can play slot, reverses, jet sweeps, vertical throws. He's a nimble player and just a guy that, can get the ball in space.
Peter Ball, go ahead.
Yeah, Eli, you signed a good amount of cornerbacks this class. I guess what do you see from that group of players that you were able to bring in?
Well, that was an area of need that we had to have. Defensive backs are a huge part of what we do, and just with seniors, attrition, and numbers, we really needed to sign quite a few. And so I thought, obviously Darius Jackson's a guy that Coach Gibbs had seen live in evaluation, and so that was really big for us, being able to get his commitment so early. And he's a guy that's still playing football right now in the playoffs, which is awesome for us. And then, we were able to get a couple of guys out of Florida, which we've had very good past success, obviously, with JC, Kyrie, and those guys in the past. And so, again, Link, Zaquan Reeves, obviously a guy that's long and has, great ball skills. But I think, another guy is Davion Sistrunk, who's a tremendous basketball player. He's got really good hops. So that translates to having good ball skills, in our opinion, and being able to play man-to-man defense. And so, you got Tyler Hibbler as a guy who, we got out of St. Louis, who's got position flexibility in the mold of maybe a Martez Manuel. You got Dalen Carnell, who's a highly ranked young man out of Indianapolis, which I'm extremely proud of. DJ Smith, going into a state that we've not really been in, and for him to find, not only find, it wasn't hard to find them, but to build a connection to get 2 4-star players out of the state of Indiana and get them into the SEC, I think it's a tremendous thing for our university, but also for a demonstration of what kind of relentless recruiter he is. But back to the DBs, it was important that we found them. And that's really a tough position to evaluate without camps. But our staff did a really good job of watching film and finding those guys.
And
All right,
can
we got
some of those
three-
guys? Oh, sorry. Can some
We
of
got
those
time
guys?
for three more, Peter. So we got to move on.
right.
Kyle Pinnell, go ahead.
Yeah,
Peter
Coach,
tried to follow up.
Coach, with 2020 being the way it has been, and a lot of these recruits who recruited today not being able to get to the campus, what's made this year so unique for you as a coach, and just how hard is it to sell a program, and what's your message to these recruits who haven't been fortunate enough to get to Missouri before today?
I think we've become the experts at virtual Zooms and walking around, and you got to be careful when you walk around this building. Tori or Jake or KP or Evan are going to be walking around with an iPhone showing people around, and we just had to be creative. I think the one thing you miss is just interaction. I don't know what the stat is off the top of our head, but how much of our communication is nonverbal, and it's hard to get that when you're not in person. It's a little bit more difficult to read people. So I think that's one thing that they're going to have not experienced necessarily. But other than that, I think they understand it's not necessarily bricks and stones. It's the people inside the building that make the culture and the program successful. And I think they felt that within our staff, and they felt that within the people in the organization. It's one thing when people say, this coach is a salesman or whatnot, but it's going to be extremely hard to fake them out with your equipment guy, your trainer, your strength staff, your nutritionist, your academics, and all the different people that we surround these guys with every day. And I think collectively we just showed who we are and what we're about, and the culture within our organization.
Eric Blum, go ahead.
Eli, as you look across the entire class, are there one or two guys that you brought in today that you think maybe didn't get the attention they deserved, and so you think might be somewhat of a steal or a standout in terms of what attention they got before you got them, and then can do big things for you in the future?
Well, I don't want to sell anybody short by just singling out maybe one or two. But I'm extremely excited about Jonathan Jones, a defensive end out of McKinney, Texas, a guy who's got great length and plays extremely hard against great competition, and a guy, again, who can play multiple position for us and really affect the game in a positive way. I highlighted Darius Jackson, a guy that we saw live and think, has got length. His dad's a high school football coach. He's still playing right now and does a really good job. Gavin McKay was hurt most of the season, but and plays wide receiver. But Coach Woods was able to have him in camp when he worked at another institution, and just saw his ability to block. And we're excited about his growth potential and what he's going to become. Zach Lovett's a linebacker that really is a downhill, sideline to sideline, rushes off the edge on his high school tape, and does a lot of different things. Boy, I tell you what, Damian Wilson's a thumper. I mean, just a guy that is explosive when he hits you, finds the football, comes downhill. I know Coach Smith always says the best linebackers come from North Carolina, which I guess is because he's from there and all that, but was excited to get that young man here. So I think those are some guys that jump out at me. Daniel Robledo's a guy that was a teammate with Ben Key. And so we were able to see his film last year and just really recruited him. He didn't get to play this year because of COVID, but really excited about Daniel and what he's going to do and bring. So, I think that's kind of it.
All right, we'll go back to Peter, and then Gabe, you can close us out. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Eli, back to the, defensive backs. Are those guys, do you have them kind of pegged down as either cornerbacks or safeties, or could they, is there positional flexibility with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think with what we do, there's a lot of position flexibility. We asked Josh Bledsoe, even though he's listed as safety, to play a lot of nickel man-to-man. And so, however you define that, we've got three tremendous defensive back coaches. And so we'll let those guys kind of work it out. I think there's some natural positions that they might fit. But JC was a high school wide receiver and came in and started as a safety and now moved as a corner and has played that position really well. So I think we'll figure that out as we move forward.
All right, Gabe, close us out.
Well,
Gabe
went home early.
All right.
Anybody else want to close this
Hey,
out?
oh, I'm sorry. Sean unmuted me and then I muted myself. I don't think it's directly related to signing day, but the ruling today on the transfer rule, I think, was kind of a result of this recruiting process. I know it just happened today, but do you have any thoughts on this, 1-year waiver, how that's going to change things for you guys and programs across the country over the next year?
Gabe, I'm going to be real honest. I have no idea what you're talking about. I was on the practice fields and been in meetings since 1. So if you'll update me, then I'll answer. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they basically approved a 1-year exception where you can transfer without sitting. Anybody can transfer without sitting out for this year.
Anywhere?
I believe
Is
that's
there an
correct.
SEC? Is there an SEC?
I mean, it was NCAA council.
Yeah. I mean, great for the kids, tremendous for the young men. I'm going to watch my words carefully. I try to believe the best in people, and so hopefully the integrity of tampering and all that stuff will hold true. I think we have an unintended consequence right now in our transfer portal. I saw a stat where there was 60% of the young men who go into the transfer portal don't end up with a scholarship. Sometimes the grass, there's a saying, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And sometimes when you face tough times, sticking it out and figuring out on the other end is the best path forward. Not always, all right, I'm done with this, I'm going to just move on. I get it. Sometimes it's not a right fit. Not every situation is the same. Not every situation is the same. But man, oh man, we're going to have to be really careful because this is a tremendous game because of what it teaches you about what you can accomplish when you face adversity and fight through adversity and come through on the other side. And I guarantee you, every one of these young men, as great as they are, and every young man that's in my locker room right now has at some point or another thought about transferring. And sometimes you got to stick it out. Sometimes you got to finish. Sometimes you got to have a fight to the finish spirit. And I just hope we're not creating an easy way out for young men. And again, every situation's different, tremendously different. And, when it benefits you, you're all for it. When it goes against you, I guess you're all against it. But just in generalities, I hope that we don't create a scenario where we find, we're giving young men an easy way out when they face adversity. Like I said, there's been young men come in and talk to me about transferring, and I agreed it was in their best interest and felt like, hey, for the interest of both parties, absolutely. There's been young men that come in and I thought, boy, this is absolutely not the right decision, but I'll support it. So ultimately, I want what's in the best interest of that young man and their family and hope they make the best decision. But again, not everybody who's walking into that transfer portal is getting a scholarship on the other end of it. And there's a lot of young men who put their name in the transfer portal in the fall, and they're not going to have a scholarship in January because they didn't get a place to go. And that is ultimately not what the goal of college football is. The ultimate goal of all of these young men, and what I've asked our coaching staff and their players and their parents to make sure of, is we chase two dreams: a life with football and a life out of football, outside of football. We want them to be uniquely successful and developed playing this game. And we're going to surround them with all the different things that they need in order to achieve their personal best playing the game. But ultimately, they're going to be measured in this life on what kind of life they live outside of the game of football. And do we prepare them for that life by making sure that they have a degree and life skills that can make them a positive contributor to society? And that's what we're going to push and make sure of. And that's the dream of the collegiate model. That's the goal of college football, is that we give young men opportunities that they might not have outside of their God-given ability to play this game at a high level. And ultimately, that's our jobs, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to push them to be the best on the field, but also their best off the field. And sometimes there's some growing pains in that. And, with that, I guess, I don't know if that answered your question, but I had no idea that happened. It's going to be hard to manage rosters, and hopefully there'll be some sort of relief. And this wasn't just a ready, shoot, and then aim afterwards type deal. But usually that's how it played out, at least the last 365. So anyway, again, if it's in the best interest of the kid, great. I don't think that's the question I'm debating. I hope we're not setting young men up to think that anybody that goes into the transfer portal comes out.
All right, we'll let Coach go with that one. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, MIZ.